You know, it helps to start with the basics. Ritual monsters kind of... well, they sucked for a while in Yu-Gi-Oh! You had Relinquished, and then Demise OTK, and then no one really cared about them until an entire archetype based around the mechanic came out. Came out and then got their two best cards limited for two completely different loops. So what if you made an archetype of rituals based on having even more searchability and a much higher power ceiling, not to mention the ability to stun your opponent from special summoning and making them run absolute jank like Bullblader, or, I don't know, an Ice Barrier card. Introducing Necroz, a deck that searches like spellbooks and even has their own Jowgen. Best part is, they don't just have Kaiku as a beatstick, they have basically everything but Colossus as a beatstick. This deck basically could make whatever they wanted to happen, actually happen on their first turn, as consistently as Death and Taxes, and that meant that they had exclusive and constant access to their hand trap, the Necroz of Valkyris. Not only does he have a wonderful piece of art attached to him, he also has a great amount of utility. Being a battle fader for the low cost of banishing a Necroz from the grave is a great way to protect your Jin-locking Necros on the field. And the card is a notable monster on the list for being able to actually do something if it's on the field. Tributing cards to draw whatever cards you didn't search that turn is exactly what Necros needed, leading to this card coming out as a ridiculously short print secret rare in the Secret Forces, alongside Necros of Bryanak, Trishula to a lesser extent, at least in my own experience, and I guess Mayo Senju Daibak, which is kind of like having your little brother hang out with you and your college friends because your mom really just wanted you to. In any case, Necroz of Valkyris is a great card that's on play in a Tier 0 deck, and we're only at number 10. This one's for my Duel Links fans out there. Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, that game every Yu-Gi-Oh! Player loved to make fun of until Speed Duels came out and they latched on to hating that. If you play either of these game formats, good! You're supporting a different way of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And you're cool off that alone. If you're a newish player and you play one of these formats, or it was your gateway into the main trading card game, please do let me know in the comments. In any case, Duel Links has always had a completely whack metagame compared to what you actually see in the real game. From enemy controller refusing to be anything other than a meta staple for about 2 years, to Time Wizard literally winning the World Championships this year. Yes, that is a thing that happened, and it was the most ridiculous 3-0 I've ever seen. Look it up. One of those cards has seen almost no play in real life, but has made so many waves in Duel Links that it has a derogatory nickname, that being Sphere Ebola. Welcome, Sphere Kuribo! This card is an attack negator that switches the attacking monster into defense mode. Much lower power level than anything else on this list, sure, but the waves it has made in one of the biggest mobile apps to ever exist cannot be understated. The thing is still calculated at about $60 real-world money on average to pull the first one. That's accounting for grinding at the box it's in exclusively and spending all your free gems on it off a new account. $60. Now imagine getting 3, you're gonna need some deep pockets for that one. And all just to be a no entry for a single monster. This is what Duel Links is and will continue to be. A great way to surprise top players and make the community at large laugh at such a huge discrepancy in power. This one I'm going to have to share. Both of these cards do basically the same thing, but accomplish it in such a slightly different way. I really didn't want to put one over the other or exclude one from the list, to be honest. Some of the best cards to pair with Card D to make sure you don't just straight up die after your turn-ending Pot of Greed, we have Battle Fader and Swift Scarecrow. Both of these cards decide to say no to an entire phase of your opponent's turn, basically making them go, well, past turn, I guess. Negating a direct attack and ending the battle phase is a pretty good effect, but there's not much to explain on the matter, so let's talk about which one is better. There are no right answers here, and I would love to see your takes in the comments and in the poll at the top right-hand corner of the screen. Swift Scarecrow is pretty no-nonsense about his effect, not even wanting to be summoned and look his opponent in the face as he says no. This gives him the strange and very meta-relevant downside of being able to be negated by Called by the Grave, a card basically every meta deck runs multiples of anyway, just for the cards that are a bit higher up on the list. Also an upside, strangely enough, as while both are weak to effect negation, only Battle Fader can be weak to summoning negation, as he brings his 0/0 body to the board and therefore can be solemned. Him being on the board could help with link plays in today's day, but he was only ever relevant in level 1 Monster Mesh, so you could see summon with him, maybe even start some of your plays based on stopping your opponents on the turn prior. Which battle negator do you guys think is better? Be sure to vote in the poll and tell me in the comments section down below. You better have some good reasons. Oh geez, 2 ties in a row? This is less for being the same card in different wording with very slight differences, and more for being battle hand traps that were so meta-impactful and came out so close to one another that multiple topping decks of the era ran multiples of both. Here we have Gors, the Emissary of Darkness, and Tragodia, the final boss of the GX manga, come to life in an actual trading card. Kind of weird when you think about it. It's kind of like having a card literally just based on Merrick, and the art is him, which is a dude. Anyway, both of these cards have left a mark on competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! History, and I'll start with the one that I personally feel is the weaker one on that front. Tragodia is much more generic, just needing damage to be dealt in order for you to summon him, and he even has a neat gimmick of changing his level and being able to steal an opposing monster for your own usage when the turn comes back to you. Doesn't happen very often, but boy howdy is it a good sign you're about to make a comeback when it does. Very good hand trap, summons a big beatstick, but you know what no one ever says? I'm going to attack in Tragodia order. Gore's order is a phrase for a reason. We're a decade removed from anyone playing the card at a serious or competitive level, but there's no reason not to attack with the smallest monster first, even if your opponent doesn't run Gors. Yu-Gi-Oh! Players have their own version of the boogeyman, creeping around and making sure you play the best you can at all times, or else you just kind of lose out on like 3,000 damage, and the Gors token's bigger than everything else on your field, so you might as well just scoop. Not to mention the fact that Gors is such a cool card that I would love to cosplay him at some point. Or at least get the visor and wear it around much more than I really should. So there you go, Gors and Tragodia. Two wonderful cards that marked an era of fear so great that people feared the acronym BP more in Yu-Gi-Oh! Than when referring to the Deepwater Horizon. Here's one for the classic players out there. If you've played Yu-Gi-Oh! For longer than a month at any point after the release of Light of Destruction, you will know this card. No, I'm being genuine. You really should, because this is a card that's seen play as long as that set's been released. Especially with an entire deck that could abuse 3 of them coming out in that same set. I'm being truthful, guys. Come on, I'm just being honest. Yeah, this card really does exist just to make Judgment Dragon huge and be a punchline to really bad Yu-Gi-Oh! Puns, huh? To be serious, this thing is a monster. Yeah, that's what the attack and defense on the card means, but really, this thing is an absolute nightmare to deal with. You think you're all fine. You're just attacking that small 1,000 attack Lumina over there, and then whoops, it's huge, and you're an idiot for not popping the weak light monster instead of the giant Judgment Dragon. Every time I would hear my opponent say, damage step, my heart would sink and I would regret every life choice that brought me to that attack. Honest is such an amazing card that soon enough there came a day where there was an archetype that could not only run Honest, but 3 more copies of it in the form of Bujins and their Crane. Susanoo could OTK out of nowhere, and even search the damn thing, just like every other good card in this archetype. Yes, literally, Yamato, what's your point? Crane basically made it so Honest got even more out of control, and also made a 10k beatstick less of a pipe dream and more of a Tuesday. Crane is more for the honorable mentions category here, but it's worth pointing out that Lightsworns could look at Bujins and ask why their mother let them play with 4 Honests. Well, no other reason than Honest is such an iconic card that simply needed more representation for such a gorgeous artwork. Yeah, that's just about as valid a reason as any. Here's one you can call a mistake. Literally. When so many decks are based on searching their entire deck religiously to try and get to their combo pieces, shutting them down for even a single turn can be integral. You could just go first and chain Mistake, or you could go second and kill on turn 2 with Drawlin' Lockbird. Drawlin' Lockbird says that the opponent gets only 1 search and nothing else. Slam this against Necros, Spellbooks, Spiral, most things actually, it just depends on what time period you're in. Not much else to say on this thing, other than it has seen play for as long as it's been out, and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. Okay, there's one other big thing to talk about. Trickstar Reincarnation. If you have no idea what this means, well, your opponent draws, and then you play Trickstar Reincarnation and Drawlin' Lock. And that is all. They don't have a hand. It is a very fun interaction, and I am happy that it is in the game. Light Stage was the real hit. For this next one, I could slam the entire archetype into this listing, but that would be no fun, so I'll just use the best one. Cyframes are a deck that made Yu-Gi-Oh! Players around the world say, well, I guess I don't get to play my turn, thank you. Through multiple hand trap negations, that, with their handy-dandy field spell, would just synchro into 2 of the best synchro monsters for their time. Not to say they aren't good now, one's limited after all, but Zeta hasn't been the staple that it once was. Even though it is pretty solid. Anyway, one of the gears is so good it's been played in the meta since release, and even negates other hand traps. It's Cyframe Gear Gamma. It's a Divine Wrath on legs that deck thins and doesn't need a discard. As simple as that. Gamma has been so represented in the greater landscape of Yu-Gi-Oh! It actually got a reprint in Extreme Forces Special Editions. And it's still a money card after a reprint of such high quantity. It's like Shadow Spectre Stardust still being $5 after so much time, and I don't understand why, other than the fact that it's Stardust Dragon. If you have any Cyframe Gear Gammas lying around, slam 3 and a driver into your deck, sell the rest to get yourself some pocket change. I mean, pocket change like 20 bucks, but that's actually much better than pocket change. Get yourself a good lunch. Here's the one I probably remember the most fondly. Duelist Revolution was an absolute banger of a set, introducing cards you still see today and were way too expensive back then. Examples include a Pot of Duality, for its wonderful ability to deck them efficiently at the cost of special summoning, which was a low bar to clear at the time, since even OTK decks needed a turn or two to set up. Solemn Warning with the ability to have God himself say no to summons, or even cards that would summon other cards, like Macrocosmos hilariously. And of course, who can forget Effect Veiler? He, and yes, Effect Veiler is a he in case you never knew, can negate a monster's effects on the field off a discard. Okay, so it's objectively worse Gamma, right? Why is he so much higher? Well, Veiler's been played for a much longer time, and was used at a time where you could normal summon hand traps and not feel absolutely terrible about it. As a level 1 tuner, it helped a lot of decks like Trishula or Cataster, incredible synchro monsters that were some of the biggest threats of their time. Special shout out to Billy Break's Tengu plants for being insanely fun, and also almost never discarding Effect Veiler, which is hilarious. That's what I call a good hand trap. You can discard it as, you know, God intended, but you could just not, and it's also okay. Thank you, Effect Veiler. Also, artwork good. A lot of hand traps have really good artwork, it appears. We all saw this one coming for the list, but probably not without also saying it'll be number 1. But JCD! Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is easily one of the most played hand traps ever made! How could it possibly not be number 1? Well, yes, it's insanely powerful and has 3 really good effect types to negate off of a single discard, but we're here to talk about the positives, and number 1 is number 1, and we'll get to that. Ash Blossom, known in the player base as Ash Forehead because this literal child can't catch a break for looking like Peyton Manning after watching Rick and Morty Season 4 through his third eye, is a card that basically single-handedly killed a lot of casual players' fun in the game. Why go for my combo if it gets negated in 3 different spots by a single card? If I play around it, I lose! A card that instills that kind of fear in the player base at large has to have some representation somehow, and boy howdy does it! Try to find a top 32 when this card isn't at least in the side deck for most of them. I don't think you could for any major event after this card's release in Maximum Crisis. It's an absurd card that proves that 3 lines of text are all you ever need to read in Yu-Gi-Oh! The first line of your first card that turn, the line on Ash that negates it, and your match slip. Here are some honorable mentions before we get to number 1. The Giant Meteor coming out in the Gold Sark Megatins. To future-proof this video, it has not been included as it does not exist at the time of publication. I think it's absurdly powerful and would have been good since the Synchro era, but it wouldn't be fair to judge it unless it's actually seen play, so I won't count it for the list. Max C isn't technically a hand trap, as a hand trap is usually defined by a card effect that happens in the hand in response to a card or effect your opponent is responsible for. Max C would have been an easy number 1 if I allowed it, but also Golden Ladybug would be considered a hand trap as well, and those words are heresy. So yes, Max C is broken, but not technically a hand trap. Dragon Ice. It has cool artwork and a neat story on where it came from. Watch my Yu-Gi-Oh! Trivia video for that one. And I just really like the card design from a gameplay and aesthetic point of view. Collude is just honest and Crane, but for Black Wings, and if I didn't put Crane on the list officially, Collude's not even close. It's like putting Battle and Boxer Veil on the list. You'd think I was smoking crack and just turn off the video. Lastly, Gnome Material. Gnome Material is just good enough to see play, but hasn't been around long enough to really be something people remember a format for, and hasn't been used long enough for an era of Yu-Gi-Oh! To be dated by the inclusion of it in decks like it was a cave painting. We know what hand traps the Synchro era used, Magnetic Seas, we know the main contenders of this era, but Gnome Material is just a bit too new to really be put in such a category. It's an incredibly strong card, but it's not the most iconic thing in the world. At least not yet. Our number 1, however, really is something special. I love going back to the beginning. Finding out what the meta was in Yugi and Kaiba structure deck format, seeing how art is done piece by piece, anything that shows the genesis of a new idea. Without getting too wistful or philosophical, that's the primary reason I chose a certain other ghost girl for the top spot. The one who started them all. Welcome, Yuki Usagi. Recognize the name? Well, she was a reason people were mad at Konami for a day or so until they messed up something else again. Because they changed her name. She now goes by Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, a literal translation of the Romanized kanji. Why is she above Ash Blossom when Ash does more things better? Well, the student superseded the master, yes, but the master gets the glory for her dojo. Ghost Ogre was wildly popular, and known as basically the only card in Cross Souls. I mean, sure, Clear Wing, but this card is on an entirely different level of splashability and ease. She started the trend of Ghost Girls disrupting the opponent, and did a damn good job of just straight up nuking something for daring to wake her up from her little nap in your hand. She just wants to rest up and grow strong, guys. Don't you want what's best for her? Of course you do, so stop playing Yu-Gi-Oh! She isn't a fan of you doing that.